Went to public school. They told me Darwin had it figured out. Started doing drugs when I was 6. Molested from the time I was a year old. Life didn't turn out the way that it should have. That sent me off on an atheist journey, because if you have no God, where do you find hope? Where do you find a future? Where do you find a plan? Where do you find meaning? Where do you find value? Where does any of that come from if you live in an atheistic worldview and a naturalistic worldview?
Welcome to the Creation Today Show, where we bring together interviews with experts and solid Bible teaching. Your host, Eric Hovind, affirms the ultimate authority of God's Word, the truth of creation, and why it matters to you.
A former atheist has once again become an amazing apologist. I love it when that happens. Today we're talking to my friend, the bearded beast, as I call him, to learn how he is helping to equip the next generation to defend the faith. Hey, welcome to the Creation Today Show. I'm your host, Eric Hovind. I'm going to bring you a new topic every single week here at creationtoday.org. The topics are always fascinating and the guests are always fantastic. Today is going to be no exception. Hey, if you're new to the Creation Today Show, we are on a mission to disciple the world. We want to turn the stumbling blocks that keep people from seeing Jesus as the creator and redeemer of mankind into stepping stones on their journey to know the truth. Hey, to my Creation Today partners, welcome guys. Thanks for being on here today. Really glad you guys are here. What a blessing to work with each one of you to spread the truth around the world. Oh, I've got an update for you guys. This week is our annual board meeting, so lots of reports being done, lots of things happening to find out what's been going on over the last year to make sure we give a full report to the Creation Today board. And we've got some amazing news to report on so many fronts, but I thought I'd give you a sneak peek. Rachel just finished calculating the annual reach through social media, and this year, I still couldn't believe it. Drum roll, please. Rachel, throw that in the comments. What was our reach last year through social media? Do you have that handy? 85 million people reached through social media this last year. Unbelievable. Guys, thank you. Partners, it's working. You guys are helping reach around the world with the gospel message. Hey, if you're joining me on social media and you haven't partnered with Creation Today yet, I don't know what you're waiting on. Get over to creationtoday.org and help us reach more people this next year. Hey, speaking of reaching people, that is what my guest is all about. He hosts camps all summer long around the country to equip the next generation with the facts, with apologetics. They're actually called Equip Camps, and they're incredible. He travels and speaks for an amazing organization, Reasons for Hope. We love what they do. They're the ones who do the debunked videos. Anyway, maybe we can talk about that. He has now spent more than, I believe it's 80 weeks doing youth camps. He is also unwavering in his mission to equip the next generation with a solid foundation. Ladies and gentlemen, it's my friend. Please help me welcome Mr. Dave Glander. Dave, thanks for hanging out with me today, buddy.
Oh, dude, couldn't be more blessed to be here with you, brother. And you, in that little intro video thing, you actually captured some of the Thursday night when we call up the leaders to come up on the platform and watch that next generation worship. Whoa, that got me choked up just sitting here watching it.
It is amazing to see what you're doing. You're getting the cream of the crop. I guess they're not the cream of the crop when you start, but you're bringing them in and you're educating them through these camps. I tell you, start by just telling us, how did you get started in that? But I kind of want to back up and get your whole story, because I want to ask the question, how do we do what you're doing? How do all of us pass on apologetics to the next generation? So maybe you tell me where to start, right? Because you were an atheist, now you're an amazing apologist. Maybe we should hear that quick story first and then go into the Equip camps.
I can make that pretty quick.
Okay.
I grew up in New England, excuse me, where there wasn't a whole lot of Jesus. Went to public school. They told me Darwin had it figured out. Started doing drugs when I was 6 years old. It's a long story, but I'm giving you the elevator testimony. But started doing drugs when I was 6. I molested from the time I was a year old. Life didn't turn out the way that it should have for many reasons and back in that day. But anyway, so that sent me off on an atheist journey, because without God, where do you find hope? Where do you find moral? Where do you find ethics? Because of the molestation, morals was very low on the list of things as far as what's morally correct and incorrect. When that happens to you, your childhood's kind of stolen from you. So I didn't realize I was an atheist though until I moved to Georgia when I was 18, and Georgia's the Bible Belt, part of the Bible Belt. And when I got there, there was a church on every corner, and people would pull out Sunday morning and flip you the number one sign, because they cut you off in traffic. And I just couldn't stand Christians. I was watching them going, is there anything about them that I want to know what they know? And there was just, I couldn't find anything. And so fast forward to when I was 26, my mom died. And when she died of a gruesome cancer, she was like my best friend. And so I didn't know where to turn. So I turned to crystal meth, pure ice. And after about a 3-year long addiction, I was down to 110, 115 pounds. I had lost everything. That my house was in foreclosure. My vehicle had been repoed. My business was being shut down. I moved out from my wife and my son and just abandoned them. I didn't know what else to do. Because again, I repeat, if you have no God, where do you find hope? Where do you find a future? Where do you find a plan? Where do you find meaning? Where do you find value? Where does any of that come from if you live in an atheistic worldview and a naturalistic worldview? And so one night I went home. I was sleeping on in an estate that hadn't been closed yet, on some corner, in a corner, and some couch cushions that I had found. I was basically living as a homeless guy, but I went back to where my wife and my son were, and she was reading a book called Knowing Jesus Personally, and I started to pick on the concept of the book. I started to pick on her for reading it. Here I am, abandoned father, husband / meth addict / loser. I'm picking on her for this faith, And so finally, Eric, I can make it real short and sweet. I finally started having it out with God. I didn't think anybody was there listening. And, I thought it was a one-way phone call, you know what I mean? And so I finally said this. I looked up through the roof of my house, the ceiling, and through the roof, into the clouds. And I just said, if you're God, do something about it. And, boy, careful. If you're gonna say something like that, because fast forward, I don't know what happened next. All I know is I had a major problem on my hands because he basically removed everything that made me, and he pulled my cursing mouth. He removed my guitar from me because I had bad intentions with that. He took the meth addiction from me. He just everything that caused me to be me ceased to exist. Well, as you know, as a naturalistic worldview, that's not allowed. That's called supernatural intervention. And I didn't know what had happened. So I started studying Islam first. I studied Buddhism first, and found out that the original Buddha, Siddhartha Gautama, said there is no God. And so that didn't make any sense. So then I started studying Islam, thinking, okay, I don't see Christians blowing themselves up in buildings. Obviously, Allah must be the right thing because of their zeal. Found out Muhammad wanted to kill himself by throwing himself off a cliff because he thought he was possessed by a demon, and his wife Khadijah had to convince him, no, these are actually angelic visits. And I'm like, that can't be the God who did this to me. I just wanted to find whoever did this, because I had a peace that I hadn't maybe ever had, Eric, just to be honest with you. I don't know if I ever had as much peace as I currently had when I was removed from when God saved me from myself, really. So I just wanted to thank whoever this was. I didn't realize I was going to get into a life of servanthood. I just wanted to, hey, thank you. And so anyway,
that's the best thank you, though. That is the best. That's ultimately what an ultimate thank you. You are living the thank you. Yes.
So my mother-in-law gave me A Case for Christ by Lee Strobel, and it wasn't even the whole book. I can narrow it down to when I got down to the historicity of Jesus, that you can close the Bible up and you can find Jesus in first century enemy attestation. I was like, what? You mean this guy was really here? No, come on. Like, nah, that's not how this works. I thought this guy was just a mythological, legendary figure. So so then I was like, okay, well, if he really was here, really lived here in Jerusalem 2,000 some odd years ago, what does the Bible say about him? I picked up the word, and when I read the Gospels, I understood where the peace came from. Well, here's the nutshell version. What else don't I know now? You know what I mean? Like, now I was almost 30 years old when I came to the Lord. Wasted 29 plus years believing a lie. So now what else don't I know? And so that set me down this, like, how did we get, I wrote the book, how did we get here? Why are we here? And where do we go when we die? All of a sudden I was like, man, I've got to answer these questions about how did I get here? Forget the fact of my science teacher told me we came from common ancestry. We came from, chimpanzees and humans evolved from common. How did any of it get here in the first place? Because I believed nothing created everything. And then I started going, after years of study, I'm like, did I really believe this stuff? Like, I'm convinced most atheists are still atheists if they claim that, because they just haven't looked into it at all. Because once you start looking into it, it's really it's not that complicated to see, like, man, this is easy stuff to figure out here. So that's what drove my love for apologetics, was immediately just finding out that, man, you can know the truth. And once I started down that road, you know as well as I do, you're supposed to kind of pick a lane and stay in the lane, like either creation apologetics or resurrection apologetics or biblical, inerrancy apologetics. I have ADD, bro. I was all over the place.
Like, I'll take them all, baby. Give me the manuscript evidence, archaeology, science, all of it.
Just bring it.
Well, as you get older, Dave, you're going to find out, like I'm finding out. No, you've already found this out because you're old. As we get older, though, we realize the importance of educating the next generation. Yep. I mean, as a matter of fact, I feel like as I get older and older, it just gets more and more important. I'm like, oh my goodness, I'm getting further away from them. I'm possibly more disconnected from them. But yet, man, my desire to see them educated grows the older I get. You're doing something about it. Obviously we're trying to as well, but man, you're bringing kids in for camps all summer long. Tell me how your equip camps got started, because you're literally taking this information and passing it to the next generation.
So my son was probably, he's 27 now. So he was about 15, and he had been going to camp. He was 8 when I got saved. So he is he's the first one out of my family who's brought up in a Christian household. Like I'm the first one who in my family. There's some debate about some other folks out there, but I'm really my family who's like just sold out to the case for Christ, right? My son is the first recipient of like being raised in a Christian household. Not the first 8 years, and he can tell you that, but after 8 years old, he was raised in a Christian household. And so he kept going to camp, and he would come home and he'd be like, that was awesome. And I'd be like, but what did you get? And he'd say, well, camp was so cool. And but what was your big aha moment? What was the grand takeaway moment? And he just never had one, and it was sad to me that he just, and I would watch him and his friends, because by that point I was involved in youth ministry. Half the time I'd chaperone these trips, and I'd come home and I'd ask the kids, like, all right, what was the big moment? Oh, the drummer was so cool in the worship band. That's not life-changing though. Like, what was the big, and they just never could. And then as a youth leader, I wasn't pastoring at the time, but that was beforehand. As a youth leader, I started getting frustrated. Like, man, I called the 3-day camp syndrome. They'd go to camp. 3 days later, it's like they never went. So we spent all this time planning and fundraising and praying and all this stuff to get them to camp for what? And I was very dissatisfied with the end results. And so I got together with a friend of mine and we just started talking. By this point, I'm, chest deep into apologetics. I'm starting to teach apologetics everywhere. And I was like, what the problem is we're not teaching fundamentals while they're there. We have got an active audience. Kids go to camp. Christian kids go to camp. That's just what they do. And it's funny because I didn't grow up in a Christian home, so I didn't go to camp.
You had no idea what was out there.
No, I had no clue. But all of a sudden, I'm like, there's this camp thing, and they have camp songs, and they sing Kumbaya and eat s'mores and all that stuff. So we've got that going on. We've got an active audience, right? How do we take the active audience and transform their life? That was the question that I had. Well, here's the simple thing. I don't want to rob them of the camp experience. So at Equip, the campgrounds we pick, you've got zip lines and rock walls and giant swings and pool and lake and gaga ball, volleyball, every other ball you can think of. And it's got the whole camp, including the awesome food and everything. It is just You were supposed to crack up about that awesome food.
Yeah, all I'm thinking about is camp mashed potatoes. Will it stick? And you got to turn over the food on the plate and find out if it's going to stick.
It's the grits.
My brain instantly went to that visual.
You can take the grits, and have you ever seen that smart sand where you can it's like magnetized sand?
Yes.
Where that's what grits in camp do. You can form them into next Michelangelo sculptures coming out of camp somewhere from grits.
That's funny.
But nonetheless, we want them to have the whole experience. I don't want to rob them of that. You know what I'm saying? I want them to feel there's so many stories I've heard from. I kind of jealous of that because, like I said, I didn't grow up in that environment. So I hear of these stories of 70-year-old men who are like, I remember camp back when I was a kid, and that was where I got down to business with Jesus and all that stuff. And so I want them to have that. But here's the thing: on a 6-day, 5-night camp, we sit them down 17 times on purpose. We also have electives for those. Some kids they found out what equip is. They come to learn. Activity time, they just sit there like this and go, what's the next session? So for the elective times and during the elective times, we'll kind of go into the deeper end of the pool. It's not mandatory, but 17 times it is mandatory. And what we're doing is during the day, we're hitting them in the head 3 times during the day. We're going, okay, why do you believe what you believe? Because if you don't know why you believe what you believe, then you're what's useless. You've got to know why you believe what you believe. And so we're hitting them up here at daytime, and at nighttime we're hitting them right in the heart. And we're taking that information. We're saying, okay, it's more of an evangelical style. You're seeing that worship right now, that it's more of an evangelical style night message where it's like, what is the gospel of Jesus Christ? How does that pertain to everything that we've just got our brain wrapped around? How do we now wrap our heart around that? And when you make that 12-inch connection, it's a game changer. And so the difference is a lot, and I'm not throwing shade at other camps. I'm not. I do wish they would come to us and ask us what our model is, and we'll be glad to share it for free. I will fly out there and coach you how to do this. It's not rocket science. But change the format of your camps, because the teaching on the camps has to change in order to reach this next generation. So what we're doing is we're seeing a change, because man, when they are getting the whys to the what, I wish I had time to pull up some different footage that we have of I remember last year Carl was teaching on something that you would think teens don't care. You know what I mean? That's we always get that, oh, teenagers don't care. I'm like, I don't know what you're teaching, but dude, they care. They're starving. And so Carl was teaching, and all of a sudden he goes, oh man, I wish I had more time, because we're talking about they're about to go zip lining over the lake. They're about to go on a 60-foot giant swing, and then whatever other activities if they want to fill in the blank with all the other stuff that's going on. There's real stuff going on outside there that we're very intentional about getting them there on time, right? So Carl's like, oh man, I just so much more I want to check. Dude, the whole room just erupts in this, oh, come on, keep going. We don't have anywhere to be.
They were more interested in getting that truth delivered. Obviously, Carl's a great speaker, delivered in a great way, but they're interested in that truth more than going outside and doing the camp activities.
Absolutely, man. People don't realize that we have tried to get cameras involved, and we do have some pretty good footage, but showing that this generation is here's the thing, man. Generation X. Are you X? You're younger.
I think I'm right on that line.
You're
78, so I'm right there. Yeah.
Generation X was my generation, and I wasn't a part of the church at the time, but we started the grand failure at that moment. I might even push it the generation before us, but we handed off millennials this really weak version of Christianity that they took and ran with it, and relative truth. When I was interviewed for my first youth pastor job, and the youth pastor said, what is the number one problem in modern Christianity? And I said Christian relativism, meaning your God is your God to you, my God is my God to me. We can't even use the Bible as a standard for truth anymore. And that's a whole nother show in and of itself. Excuse me.
No, but I'm getting really passionate about that. By the way, I'm realizing more and more that the whole tolerance thing for Christians can be tolerant, but it doesn't mean they're right. Anyway, I don't want to get off trail, but man, that is huge.
To summarize that thought, 47% of U.S. pastors believe in a biblical worldview. 47% of U.S. pastors of the United States. and then you drop that associate pastors is less, teaching pastors is less, Sunday school is less. You get down to children's and youth ministers, it's 13%. That means 87% of youth pastors and children's pastors don't even have a biblical worldview, which means they don't believe in biblical inerrancy. They don't believe in absolute truth. They don't believe in the universal truth of Christ being the only way. They don't believe in that. And so that's Barna going out there and asking them.
Right.
And so, I mean, Carl has a saying. Carl's the founder of Reasons for Hope. He's got a saying that when we talk about losing 8 out of 10 youth by the age of 23, he says he goes, we're not losing them. We never had them in the first place.
Exactly.
And when you stop and think about that, like that's the huge elephant in the room is if we're not teaching biblical inerrancy, biblical truth, if we're not teaching absolute truth, we never had them in the first place. So it's not like we're losing them. We never had them. So that's what we're tackling at Equip, man. The other thing that makes Equip work so well is, dude, we don't pull any punches, man. We go straight for the jugular. Here's the thing, man. Society's coming after them. These are our kids, and society is heading head first after our kids with garbage that they're just inundating them with, especially in the public school system. And if we're, you mentioned something a little bit earlier. I think it may have even been pre-show about how we're too quiet. We're not loud enough. Here's the thing, man. We lost the gay agenda. We lost it. We just were not. Well, let me back up and say this. The church did a terrible job of teaching how to deal with the gay issue. Let me start with that. We at Equip and Reasons for Hope have spent a lot of time learning how do we teach on how to approach the subject, because with the wrong approach, guess what? You're talking to a brick wall. You know what I'm saying? You're never going to win anybody in an argument. You've got to learn to love somebody through the process. And when you do that correctly, you'd be surprised how far it goes. But we lost the gay agenda. What's up next? Trans. Hot on the market is trans. And if we don't learn how to have the conversation about trans, we're going to lose the trans argument. And the next thing you know, trans is going to be the thing that every show is going to have a trans person. Then there's going to be shows dedicated to the trans. I mean, there kind of already is, but nonetheless, we're going to lose that one. But I want to go back to this and turn it back over to you. The millennials went the wrong way with it. Generation Z started to get tired of it, and Generation Alpha, I am seeing, is sick and tired of it. Generation Alpha are the middle schoolers right now, the elementary school middle schoolers that are coming up, and they're going, look, I'm sick and tired of what my predecessors left me. Teach me the truth. I want to know what's going on, because this loose, airy, worldview doesn't work for them anymore. And I could say I honestly think they're the last generation. They're that harvest that's going to be so ripe that there's not enough workers, but that's another show in and of itself. But I think they're showing us by attitude and by proof that, dude, they're ready to receive the truth with open arms and open hearts and open minds, because they're realizing that what the millennials left them was garbage. It doesn't work. It doesn't work.
How do you think we need to be passing on then you're doing it at Equip. How does Reasons for Hope, how do you guys think through passing on this information to the next generation? I mean, if we're watching a lot of them not really be saved in the first place, we never had them, they're not lost, they just never were found. Tell me how we go through that?
I mean, we've got to get, I think it's twofold when it comes to youth. We've got to get to the youth pastors and make sure that they have a biblical worldview. And that's something that we're working on, trying to figure out how to have like youth pastor weekends, where we can have weekend retreats that really break down what is a biblical worldview. How does one hold it to a biblical worldview in a world that's so contradictory towards, or at least seemingly contradictory towards, the biblical worldview? And then the other one is in the house. Parents, whether that be parents, grandparents, aunt, uncle, adoptive parents, whoever it is that is overseeing this child's spiritual, physical, mental health. If it's not, so we'll take them at Equip, and we'll get them fired up in the right way, not with some, we don't even have altar calls. You were there.
Yeah.
We don't have altar calls. And when people hear me say that, they're like, what kind of a Christian does that? Here's what I don't want to do. I don't want to get in front of Jesus and him being like, look, I put you in charge of a bunch of youth, and you turned it into an emotional response, And so Betty went down because Susie went down because Joey went down. Well, dude, maybe Joey meant it, but Betty and Susie have no business going to the altar, but they had to go cry because they were crying and they were crying and everybody was crying. So I don't, I don't want Jesus to look at me and be like, "Did you help facilitate this cry fest?" Because what my humble opinion, there's a lot of false converts going on in that moment. When we have an altar call, here's what it is. We explain the gospel through and throughout. Don't get me wrong. They hear this year I had a talk that was called the 7 ways to share the gospel. And it's the same gospel. It's just here's 7 different ways you can share the exact same gospel through illustrations, through message, through just and so they're hearing the gospel, but when it comes time for them to make that decision, quote unquote decision, dude, there's your adult leader. Go talk to them. Spend the next 15 minutes, 30 minutes, an hour. Wait till tomorrow if you need to sleep on it. Understand what it means to commit yourself to Christ. Don't go through this walk in the aisle. Again, I'm not throwing shade at anybody who's done these things before. I get it. We get caught in this, this is how we've always done it mentality. But so anyways, we don't go down that emotional road when we're doing it. So we can get them fired up in all the right ways, meaning like they're going home ready to defend their faith. They're ready to stand bold in their faith. But if their church and their home life doesn't emulate the same thing, doesn't matter. Falls apart within a matter of moments. And so I've actually got a slide. I don't know, you steer this ship, but I've got those slides set up where, we started asking the question. We kept asking the question, why do the 75% leave?
Right. Yeah. What's key? Yeah.
Why are they leaving? And Barna has done a fantastic job of doing that. And I'll say in a nutshell, years ago, Barna got together with Britt Beam and did a study called "They're Already Gone." And what that meant was we're seeing them leave, but when did they actually leave? See, it shows up in college because they're not being forced to go to church anymore by their parents or whoever it is. So it shows up with the Exodus. But the Exodus started here back in middle school. Back in middle school, they came in asking questions. Nobody was giving them answers. And they were just believe. Don't worry about it. Just believe. Well, dude, they checked out. So they may have shown up through middle school and high school and then exited when they were in college. But technically, they left here and here. Again, I'm going back with Carl. We never had them in the first place because when they really came in going, okay, why do you want me to believe in this? We didn't give them the why to the what. Meaning the what was useless. So we've got to fix that. But it's so stupid. Look, I'm a high school dropout. I'm not proud to say that. I'm not. And I went to go to seminary and God just closed all the doors and I couldn't figure out why. And then he brought me to speak on national conferences with people who have multiple PhDs. And I'm going, what am I doing here? I don't even I barely have enough letters to spell my own name. These guys got alphabets after their name. And God has used me to show people that you don't think about Jesus. How many degrees did he have? He didn't have the qualifications by God the Father to be the voice of the Son of God. I've got the qualifications to be the voice for the Son of God because God's qualified me to do so. But I don't have that on paper. So if you don't think you can do this, I'm a walking example of, dude, all it takes is an intentionality. You've got to want to see people's lives change through the gospel of Jesus Christ. You've got to want to see. If you don't want to see that so badly, that Mark Cahill has this thing. He goes, do you care? And it's like, well, yeah, I care. But then he follows it up. He goes, do you care enough? And that word enough is kind of like, for God so loved the world. It doesn't say for God loved the world. It says for God so loved the world. And when you unpack that word so, it adds another layer to it of intentionality. Mark's statement, do you care enough? That word enough puts another layer on things, man. Do you care enough to get out of your comfort zone? Do you care enough to put in the extra hours of study? Do you care enough to start a homeschool or a home group when you can't find someone to do it? Well, you started. These are all. So I couldn't find a place that had, and to this day, I think we're one of. There's one other camp that does very similar to what we do. And then there's another camp that I won't name, but they're about 2 weeks long and they're very expensive. And it's way more like academic led, which I don't have a problem with. But Derek, we're reaching we're reaching the demographics, bro. We got kids who are coming just because they heard the girls were going to be there, all the way to students who just want to learn and everything in between. And we're hitting all of them. We're meeting all of them where they are. And so and it's during a week long, and it's only $395, man.
For a whole week. That's
We
amazing.
lose a lot of money on these things. It is worth
Hey,
it, bro.
That's right. Everybody go to r4h.org, reasonsforhope.org, and make a donation to help Dave keep going on these camps, man. It really is cool. Hey, what you said there, I got to let my social media go right now. But what you said right before that, just talking about, hey, kids aren't getting answers in middle school. We're finding them leaving in middle school. And that's what frustrates me so much, because they are told, and there's lots of Christians, older Christians, that say, oh, well, they won't say we don't have the answer for that, but they'll say, oh, well, you just have to have faith. Next week, Dave, I'm doing a show with Bud, and it's on your new Debunked, the ones that you guys just released on faith. And it is, I'm telling you, man, I'm very excited about that, because that is so confusing. And many of us are doing a disservice to individuals, to young people, when we say, well, you just got to have faith. Faith is based on having the right answers. Blind faith is absurd. It's ludicrous. We don't have a blind faith in Christianity. We have faith because we have the answers, because we have the truth. So, social media, I got to let you guys go. I want you to go get Dave's book, What, Where, Why? How, I Where. How, I Wear. I want you to go get his book, How, I Wear. Grab that at Reasons for Hope. And that website is just the letter R, the word for, F-O-R, and then H. Reasons for Hope is what that stands for. R4H.org. Please go and grab that book and get their resources. And if you want a little head start, look up their new Debunked that we're going to be discussing next week on faith. That was so powerful. I was like, this is it. I started tweeting it out, because responding to people on Twitter all the time. Oh, well, you just have blind faith. And I'm like, you guys are messing up the word here. You got a wrong idea of what it is, and that's why you're making fun of it. They're straw manning it the entire time. Anyway, that's a whole nother conversation for next week. Okay, I want you to get out your slides. I want you to start sharing screen, because you said, hey, what is it that's keeping the 25%? How do we emulate what's keeping those in the faith versus looking at why the others are leaving? And this was powerful. I'll have to talk through that with our Creation Today partners. Hey, if you're on social media, thanks for joining me. Look forward to seeing you next week as we cover Faith. It Isn't What You Think with Bub Coons. It's going to be a great conversation. If you want to join the rest of this conversation, please come over to creationtoday.org, creationtoday.org. Partner with us and help us reach the next generation with the gospel. Hey, go to r4h.org and donate to them as well. God bless. We'll see you guys next week.